Okay.
All right, go ahead, Noob. Take it whenever you're ready, young man.
All right. All right, everybody. Welcome back. All right. Got another great night here on Our Coaching Network, Clinic Talks. Going to take it a little bit of a different direction today in terms of our subject matter. We got Kevin Canty. He's the offensive coordinator at Sul Ross State down in Texas. He's Coach Canty is a guy I worked with for a couple years at Beloit College. Great coach, great mentor to kids. Does a great job of, going above and beyond to develop those personal relationships and really be more than just a coach to guys. Really be a guy that can mentor them, help guide them. He spent 15 years in coaching, got a lot of experience at multiple levels. He's been at Lake Forest College, Brevard, Husson. He was at St. Scholastica in Minnesota as offensive coordinator, O-line coach. He's done the whole gamut. He's been a head coach at the high school level. He's a 2006 graduate of Wingate University. He's currently coaching the quarterbacks at Sul Ross, so he's got some vast experience from an offensive standpoint. So if you ever want to talk offensive ball, he's definitely got some good stuff there. But today, Coach Canty is going to join us and talk to us a little bit more about just the race relations and coaching in today's age, just the climate and just different ways that you can relate to kids and be more than just a football coach for these guys. So, Coach, I'll just let you kind of take the lead here, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, I want to first and foremost, I'd like to thank you guys for joining in. When Coach Padhye Nubis hit me up and wanted me to come on and talk, and with the things that are going on right now, this is like the most pressing situation for me. I'm not here to have all the answers. I'm not here to, tell you the right or wrong way. This is more going to be open dialogue. What I've done in the past, how I think, we as coaches could reach out to other people and help them along the way. As far as that goes, like Coach said, some of my background, I've been at the D2 level. That's the highest scholarship level I've worked at. Most of my coaching career has been at the Division III level, and they've been in areas where it's not as diverse as some other schools in big cities. So I've seen a lot when it comes to race relationships within the staff and with the student athletes. My biggest thing is, especially being at the lower level, we get a lot of coaches going and pulling these kids from Texas, Florida, out in California, and taking them to remote places. And then when they're getting there, they're not giving the kid what they need outside of the football aspect of things. And that's just a mentorship, helping them develop relationships on campus, and just looking out for them. And there's right ways and wrong ways about doing stuff. I feel like in today's age and times, you can't really BS a kid. And excuse me for saying that. They actually know the true genuine relationship or what you're trying to convey to them. My biggest thing, I always tell a kid, when I pull them from one area of the country to another where it's not diverse, you want to be able to feel comfortable. If anything were to happen, you want to be able to go in your coach's office and be able to close the door and sit down and talk to that coach. And I've seen coaches, and I've been a part of staffs where that's been great, and I've been a part of staffs where if the kid doesn't come to me or another coach that might resemble that kid doesn't get the same treatment or get the cold shoulder that his counterpart wouldn't do or wouldn't receive as far as that goes. Like getting more involved with your school's climate as a whole, that's huge. I know they put a lot on our plates as football coaches, just outside, just within the title of being a football coach. I mean, if you're a coordinator, you got a lot on your plate. If you're head coach, you have everything on your plate. but trying to get involved with other things on campus, different groups. I've been a part of Black Student Union Association at some schools. Some schools I worked with the diversity and inclusion department, and just being a different avenue, and letting other people see you on campus, letting people know that you're involved, and letting your student athletes really be comfortable. I'm with you as far as that goes. I'm interested to hear how you guys, or if you guys are playing now, how you guys are dealing with what's going on with the social climate within your teams right now. I know at the higher level, you guys might have people in place to kind of nurture some of that dialogue between your players and your staff, but at the lower level, most of you guys know we wear multiple hats. So I don't know what you guys done in your schools or what you guys are doing now to kind of try to have that dialogue with your students about the social injustice and what's going on in the country right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big piece. I know here, being at Carthage, we're in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Obviously, had a lot of issues a few weeks ago, and that was definitely a tense time. I mean, that was right in the frame of time where we were moving students back to campus, and we actually had to delay it because parents were scared. They weren't sure what the climate was like. One of the big things there is it's really important that you support the players, and because today kids more so than ever are in the know about what's going on. They have all the resources. The day of, you can just, they don't know anything and they're just going to listen to what you say and take it blindly, like that doesn't exist anymore. So you've really got to spend that time to sit down, talk with them, but also understand that there's a right way to do it. There's a right way to express your opinion and to protest and things like that, and then there's obviously a wrong way to do it where you're just escalating the problem and contributing to, you're negatively affecting the narrative of what's going on. So it's really important to show it and be open with them about that, to talk with the kids about that, even if it's like you're saying, just having those conversations. I mean, I think hell, I spend more time just sitting in my office talking to guys about whatever's going on than I do talking football with some of these kids. I mean, now that we're in practice, there's a little bit more football, obviously, but before it was, we'll sit down, we'll have those conversations about politics. And it's got to be one of those deals where you have to be open and you've got to be willing to talk about those difficult subjects. That's the first piece to it. Because if you're not willing to do that, then that dialogue's never there. And then you never can, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to show these kids that it's okay to disagree. And that not everybody's going to have the same opinion, but you've got to be able to discuss your opinions in a respectful manner. And even if you both walk away still thinking what you think and not agreeing with the other person, that's okay, but at least you had the discussion. And I think that's one of the biggest problems in the world today is that, and most people don't want to discuss things. They just want to have their opinion. And if you don't agree, then you're wrong. And they want to tell you you're wrong. And it's our jobs to really have those conversations with kids. And whatever we believe or don't believe, we have to be able to hear what they are saying and show them that I'm going to listen, teach them how to listen by example, and then have that open dialogue and that discussion. So whether it's small groups and things like that, and, it's tough now with obviously COVID and, everything's got to be on Zoom and things like that. But I think it sometimes opens it up more because guys on camera are a little bit more open to discuss those things. So if you have those small groups, we did some of those things with our guys where we're just going to talk about the climate and you tell us what you're thinking. And then guys can have some of that open dialogue. A lot of times it starts slow, but then you see more and more people jumping in and starting to feel comfortable with that. And that's how we can be really good mentors, and just in leading by example and showing kids how to discuss things, how to have that open dialogue with other people and not have it turn into, you're wrong, I'm right, I hate you because you think this and you don't think the way I do. Because that's how a lot of people right now, especially the vocal minority, they're the people that want to just say, this is how it is, this is what it is, and if you don't think this way, you're wrong. And they're
And
not.
see that, and see, no, I'm totally 100% in agreement with that. And it might be just something because the way I or the way I was raised, because I was put in a different situation where, I grew up in a big melting pot, so we all had our differences, but we agreed to disagree, and we never like blatantly or took it out on each other. Me in some of the roles that I've been in the past, I've had people at top of the organization say, "This is how it's going to be." There's no discussion, and then me as another minority, I'm put in a hard position because I'm supposed to do what my top dogs tell me to do, and then that puts you're in a bad position with the kid as well. My biggest thing is I don't know. Like in the past, I've had relationships with the players where we're able to discuss, like you said, differences, and we might not all see eye to eye, but this is what we're gonna do in this situation. I just don't know how to go about like right now. Right now, I'm in a perfect situation where I'm at now because our school's named after a guy who was in the Confederate Army. Right now, we're having some good talk with our players on the right way to go about showing their displeasure about the situation versus just going blatantly and saying, "Hey, screw this," or doing that. And it's great because we have great support from our president, great support from my athletic director, and my head coach is supporting and telling our guys, you know, these are the things that this guy's done great by this race and that race, and these are the things that we're looking to kind of adjust or change. But there's a way that we're all discussing it, and I think a lot of people are afraid to have those conversations and discussions. And I truly believe that we could sit down and we could talk until the sun comes up, and I might not agree with you, but I'm gonna respect what you say, and I think that goes a long way. And I think if the players see that, that will go a long way about educating them on how to deal with certain situations as well.
Right. I think it's super important for us to, like I said, be that example, because if they pop on Twitter or any social media, they're all that you ever see is the negative, right? I mean, it's always the bad part of it. It's very rarely the good aspect of it, of how to do it, because there's no flash to that. The headlines aren't in the good news. The headlines are always in the bad news. And so, I always look at football as it's one of those last vehicles in really teaching kids some of these life lessons of how to treat other people. I mean, it's how, I mean, the head coach for the Packers said it great the other day, and he's like, if the world operated like a football locker room, we'd have a lot less problems, because it's one of those deals where football is one of those last few activities where you're bringing so many people from so many different backgrounds and situations and asking them to work together. But that's where it's really important. I think the biggest step that you can take as a coach, as a head coach, coordinator, and, just anything, you just try and bring it up in your program. I think the biggest step you can take, I know that, you see, the other day I saw, Nick Saban leading his team, and they were doing that walk and all that sort of stuff. And that stuff is great. I think the biggest thing you can do is get your team into small groups of diverse guys on the team. Have a coach there, obviously, to kind of moderate it, and have a hard discussion, and force those guys to talk to each other, and force those guys, because You look at a football, there's guys that are going to sit on both sides of the fence, hardcore, that are going to feel a certain way about something. You know, obviously right now it's the racial injustices. There's certain guys, there's guys on every team, I promise you, that are 100% behind Black Lives Matter, and there's guys that are probably 100% the opposite way on every team. And it's important for us as coaches to force those guys to talk, because they can see all the stuff and you can do all the walks and stuff, but if guys aren't talking and discussing and learning how to have those conversations, then it's never going to progress past that. It's never going to move to that next level. I think one of the best things you can do is to, and it, you know, and you don't have to do the big team discussions, because you put it in the full team setting and then guys start to kind of get into their little groups and then like nobody wants to say anything. It's almost worse. You put them in small groups and you say, all right, we got these 10 guys here, these 10 guys here, these 10 guys here, and we're going to talk. We're going to spend an hour and we're going to talk about these situations. What are your feelings on this? How do you feel? Pull that out of guys.
And I mean, we're always looking for stuff to do in the preseason anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a great idea. And that's some stuff that we're doing. And we're doing more so in the class, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, instead of position group, because let's face it, some position groups aren't as diverse as others. So we take that in consideration. My biggest thing is, you know, parents now, they have to be able to trust us. You know, I mean, especially when we go right outside of our circle, they're sending. For me, when I wasn't in Texas, I would have a parent send me their kid 24, 28 hours away. You know, they need to know that you're going to have their son, their kid's best interest.
Right.
You know, if stuff hit the fan, they could come and rely on you. And I feel like so many times, in some situations, that's not the case, because so many coaches will just say, hey, I want to get this kid out here. They can help us win. They could do this. And it kills them in retention, you know. And when something happens, I've seen it many a times, a kid might make a minor mistake and then they're done with that kid. So now that kid's on the island. And, you know, that goes back to your high school coaches too. So that kind of shuts down the pipeline or whatnot. But right now, with everything that's going on, it's really getting the parents to really trust in what we're doing as coaches, and making sure that if they're going to send a little Johnny 20-something hours away, you know, that they could trust that you're going to take care of them.
And you got to look at yourself as a coach, and you got to honestly reflect on yourself, because I'll be the first one to tell you that for a very long time I was that way, where it's like, this kid doesn't do it right, and I'd cut it off, you know. And it was one of those deals where, you know, it's okay if you're not perfect at it as a coach, you know, that nobody's going to be perfect at it. It's about that growth, you know. Like, I had to make a conscious effort of, hey, pull this kid aside. Now you do it 4 or 5 times and that kid's not responding, and
you gotta go.
Different story, because you got to learn life lessons the hard way as well. There's got to be consequences, and I'm not saying guys shouldn't have consequences, but, you know, doing that comes back to that hard conversation, because it's hard sometimes to look a kid in the eye and tell him, hey, guess what? You're messing up. Like, this is what you're messing up, and this is where it's going to lead you, you know, because a lot of the times, especially kids that you haven't developed that relationship with, you don't know what their response is going to be. So it's difficult to sit down there and say, all right, I'm going to tell this kid this, and I don't know how he's going to respond to this. And then I have to be prepared to handle the response, whatever it may be. And so you as a coach, you have to lead by that example. You have to be willing to sit down and be honest and be upfront and have that hard discussion. And you've got to tell them the truth. You know, there's a lot of coaches out there that will tell kids just what they want to hear to keep them around, to keep them in, to keep them involved, because they think they can help them win. And as soon as they find somebody else that can do what they need, if that kid hasn't jumped on board, they're done with them. And, you know, if you're truly in this for the kids, if you're truly in it for the right reasons, you have to be honest with kids. You have to tell them the things that they don't want to hear. Sometimes it's, guess what? You know what? Sorry, son, I don't think you're good enough to play here. whatever it may be. You're not good enough to do this. You have to improve upon this. You know, obviously, if there's stuff that they can work on, those things are hard to say, though. You know, it's like I'm coaching QBs. There's guys I might have to sit down and be like, hey, you know what? You're not good enough to play quarterback for us. You can look at other positions. We can do things like that. I've seen guys that are in that boat and they'll just string a guy along and all right, and they're just doing a disservice to the kid because they're not being honest with them, and they're just giving that kid, oh well, you can get better. You know, you might have a chance. You know, you just got to work on this. When in reality, they're just trying to avoid the tough conversation. They're trying to avoid doing the difficult thing. And you know, I'm just using a broad example there, obviously, but it applies to everything. And if you can't have that conversation, how are you going to sit there and have this conversation with a kid that, you know, thinks this matters, you know, or this doesn't matter, that, you know, he doesn't think there's racial injustice, or he does really think there is racial injustice, and they may be going about it the wrong way. You got to be able to sit down and have that honest conversation with a kid about what's going on, and have that discussion so that you can at least understand the whys and hopefully mentor them and guide them in a way to, hey, if they want to believe what they believe, that's great. You never should convince a kid he shouldn't believe what he believes in, but you should always be working on how can you present that in a respectful way to other people.
Yeah, you know? And if you have a problem that you don't feel comfortable having some of these conversations outside of football with your student athlete, then that's when you bring in maybe a captain or maybe another person on the team, one of his buddies that you might have a better relationship with, or another coach on the team that you have a relationship. Or it could be somebody in your athletic department. It doesn't even have to be another coach on your staff that you feel comfortable having these relationships with. But these conversations need to be had, and I think they need to be had sooner than later. You know, you see a lot of coaches backtracking on things that should have been done, and you know, that's not good, you know, because these kids, once these kids have something made up in their mind, you and I both know that they're sticking to it, you know. So
right, yeah, no, I want to, you get, and you got to make sure it's genuine. You know, there's a lot of coaches that will put stuff out there because it sounds good. They want it to look good on social media. They want to get the likes. It's got to be genuine. You know, it shouldn't be stuff. It's, you know, all the social media posts and all that. That's, you know, it shows great solitude or whatever. But who are you at your core? Are you really backing this up with your players? Are you really going through and having these discussions with your players and showing them the right way to do things, the right way to present an argument, the right way to have a discussion with someone, the right way to interact with somebody that they disagree with? You know, it's just something that's not taught. You know, it's not something that's out there enough. And so you just see all the negative ways of doing it. And, you know, our youth today, they're feeding so much off of what they're seeing online and on social media and things like that.
Well, I'll be interested to see.
AJ, did you have something to add? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have something to add, and then also a question. I'm a high school head coach at Churchill High School in Eugene, Oregon, and the two things that we've tried to teach our kids is perspective and empathy. And you know, Eugene and Oregon in general is a very white state, especially outside of Portland and little pockets of Salem and Eugene. And so a lot of kids that we work with just haven't been around people of color. And so, you know, they don't have that perspective. And so this spring and summer, we brought on Juwan Johnson from University of Oregon. We on a Zoom, we brought on Thomas Graham and Johnny Johnson, and also Tyler Shuck, and just, you know, players from Oregon because we live in Eugene. And it was really eye-opening for our kids to just learn some different perspective because they just had never learned somebody else's story before. And then we talk a lot about empathy, right? Teaching how to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, teaching somebody how to step outside yourself. And so my question is, do you guys have any positive examples that you've done at your schools that emphasize those two things, helping kids develop perspective and helping kids develop empathy as a skill, because it's a skill. Most people aren't born with empathy. It's something that we can teach.
I think for me and what I've done in the past, I've been very fortunate to work at different places where some places were more diverse than others, and I'll just throw that out there. I think for us as coaches, or I'll speak for myself, I have not actually taught the the empathy side of things. I think, well, I won't say that. I did not directly teach that. I think my kids learn from how I interact with others that might not resemble me, whether it's others on the coaching staff, others within the position meeting, others throughout the campus, just being respectful as far as that goes. I think our guys, I've been in places where I've taken my position group in the past and we worked at food shelters and incorporating, especially when I was up in New England and Western North Carolina, I was the minority coaching offensive line. So I took my offensive line group and we were working the soup kitchen. We would go see less fortunate people, and then they would just see my interaction that way. And then we would talk about different things. A lot of people now, I'm a firm believer of keeping politics out of athletics and keeping athletics out of politics. But I have guys now who voice their strong opinion about our president and support them right now, and I have other guys that don't, but we'll have healthy conversations about that. And I think that's where a lot of people aren't doing it right, or might be missing a boat when they're just one-sided and they don't, like you were saying, look at it from other perspectives. I commend what you're doing, Coach Robinson. I know it's kind of hard, especially being where you're at with the lack of diversity, but I think that's awesome. The biggest thing that was kind of not a setback, but the biggest thing that I was up against my younger years coaching, being the only minority in a certain situation, is a kid that's not used to being coached or being reprimanded by somebody who look like me. And they'll get pushed back, might get some attitude, but it's not that, not that I'm doing anything wrong or misleading towards a kid. The kid just never had anybody of my stature or my ethnic group telling the kid what to do. And I find that more of an issue when I was working at the more affluent private schools. But it was you want to chime in on?
Yeah, no, I mean, I
your
think,
experience?
you talk about helping to build empathy. It's definitely a learned skill. And I think, like Coach Canty said, going down and working at the soup kitchens or whatever it may be, I think obviously, the more you can expose them to different diverse situations, the better. From a personal experience, so I have three stepdaughters, and they grew up in middle of Indiana. I mean, like farm, small 2,000 person town. I mean, they hadn't seen anything. They grew up in a small high school or anything, and then we moved up to the Rockford, Illinois area, and that's a completely different scenario. You get down into Rockford, and it's like a mini downtown Chicago. So you've got all kinds of diversity. You've got all kinds of, there's gang activity. There's different levels of poverty and things like that. And I think one of the biggest things that you can do, if there's a way to do it, depending on how close you are to different places, is just, even if it's a small group of guys, the biggest way to, in my opinion, to help build that empathy is they just have to see it. They kind of have to just know that it's out there. Like when you look, if you're in a small town your whole life and you don't go anywhere, it's hard to have that empathy because you don't know any different. So you can't even come close to understanding somebody else's plight growing up because you don't even know that that situation exists. And then once you've kind of seen it and you start to, I think with empathy, you have that appreciation for what you have, right? Because you have the ability to appreciate what you have because you've seen what other people don't have or what they're lacking. And so part of the biggest obstacle is just exposing them to the fact that, hey, look, like, we live in this town and it's a small, maybe a farm town or whatever it may be. If you can get them to an area where you are in an inner city or something like that, and it's like, hey, this is also a place where people live and grow up, and they have to go through life dealing with whatever the situations are there. Once they see it, even if they're not necessarily spending a bunch of time there, even if they're not talking to a bunch of people, just seeing that visual experience of being in some of those types of situations, it starts to change that perspective, right? Because it's like, okay, well, there's this style of life, and I have like, okay, like, wow, it's different. How would I, because then the wheels naturally start turning. It's like, what if I was in that environment? And then naturally they start to develop that empathy. So, for me, I think a lot of it came from, my parents, are from India, and I grew up in the United States, but I'd go back and visit, and there's parts of that country that are like true third world. They don't have electricity, no running water, those types of things. And I'd visit family members that lived out in some of these places. And it completely changes your perspective, because it starts to show you, all right, maybe your life, the things you think are so important aren't as important. And maybe some of these other things are a little bit more important. And maybe I can do things to help other people out, because guess what? There are other people out there that have bigger problems than me, or whatever it may be. So I think just finding different ways to expose them to different cultures, different lifestyles, different communities, different circumstances that people live in, the more exposure people get, naturally they gain more perspective, and naturally they start to develop more levels of empathy, because they can start to at least visualize it and start asking that question, what if I was in that situation? What if my life was like that? And then they can start to put at least somewhat grasp the concept, and that leads to different levels of empathy.
Thanks, guys.
No, thank you. So what, Coach Canty, with, obviously I know a little bit about a decent amount about your background from the last school you were at and things of that nature. The last school we were at together, we were at Beloit College, and it was definitely a heavy liberal arts college. And there was a lot of outward, obviously, expression of where they felt from a standpoint of the political side of things and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Being down in Texas, now you're in a completely different, mindset in terms of that. How much different is it? And, what are things that you've learned going from there to a place like Sol Ross? Like, how much of that transfers over? How different have those places been from that standpoint?
It's more, being at a liberal arts school, people are more forthcoming on their opinions, more so. They feel we're right, wrong, or different. They're entitled a little bit more. Here, it's not. Every school you have, you'll have your group that's far left, far right, whatever it might be. Yeah. We've had a small issue on campus with the Black Lives Matter shirts going around. We had a group that was opposed to people wearing them. Whatever happened, they hashed that out so that they're fine with that. Our group, because this is a pretty diverse. This is a more diverse campus than where I was last at. So you don't really see as much as we might have witnessed when we're in Beloit. But I will say both schools allow their students and their student athletes to voice their opinion. There's a right way and there's a wrong way of doing it. And our school will educate our students in the right way of doing so.
What are some of the ways that you've given them to kind of voice their opinion? What are some of the things the school has done for them?
Well, this is and every school is different. This is the first place where our president came down and talked to our student athletes. You know, our student athletes raised a concern. It might have been on a Monday, like Tuesday afternoon. He's sitting in front of them, listening to their opinions and having a good, healthy conversation with that. We tell our guys to get involved. You know, you just, especially at a small school, you know, if you want things changed, you have to be the change. You can't just come here and say, "Hey, I'm just an athlete," or "I'm a football player," and then raise all the heck you want to raise, and no one pays attention. You know, you get involved through campus ministry, FCA, um, the Colored Student Union, or whatever different avenues on campus. Then you voice your opinion. Your voice is heard by more people, and that's how things get changed. So we're very supportive. Everywhere I've been, that has been one positive thing. You know, I've worked with coaches that were supportive of letting the kids get out, voice their opinions, and try to make change the right way. And that, that's tough because you get some coaches, some older coaches that are set in their ways that aren't like wanting to change with the times, but those coaches aren't coaching too much longer. You know, right. You have to be able to change with what's going on in the society.
Yeah, I think the days of you just do what I tell you just because I tell you. I think Jason, you said that yesterday in your talk. Those days are gone. You have to be able to relate with the players and have those discussions of the whys, whether it's scheme, whether it's, you know, program rules or philosophies of just life and things like that. Like, you can't just say you should do it this way because I tell you. You know, that's just not going to fly anymore. You have to, whatever you're going to do with your players, whatever it may be, from the X's and O's to how we're going to run the program to, you know, what are your personal beliefs and things like that. You have to be ready to answer the question why, because you're going to get asked that question by kids. They're going to ask you why. Why do you think this way? Why are we doing this? Why is this a rule, etc. And you better have a reason for it, because if you don't, and you're just doing it because the last guy did it, or you saw it done, or that's just because the way it's always been done, you're gonna find yourself really behind the eight ball at that point. You're gonna start. They're not gonna believe. They're gonna see right through you then. And that's where it's, whatever you're gonna do, just make sure you have your convictions and you have the ability to explain why you're doing what you're doing, how it's gonna be beneficial for the program, for the kid, how it's going to help make everybody better in the long run, whatever your reasons may be. You better make sure you have those reasons and you can articulate them, because you're going to get asked that question. So everything you do, make sure you have a reason for it. You know, I always go back to the John Madden quote. I heard, it's like, the fewer rules you have, the fewer rules the players can break. And it's almost true to a certain extent, because you know, if you sit there, I mean, you saw what happened with Iowa and, you know, all those types of things. It's like, okay, well, we wouldn't let us wear hats. They wouldn't let us dress this way. And kids would be, you know, they wanted to know why. And there was no reason why. It was just one of those things. So then the risk that you have is, if you don't have a reason why, you leave it up to the imagination of said player or group of players to start concocting whatever reasons they feel it may be, right, wrong, or indifferent. And that's what they're going to feel. And that's what they think that's what they think the reason is. And that's what they're going to go with.
I will say this, to piggyback on what Nubis was saying, like, when you're communicating or you building that relationship, it has to be genuine relationship. I would say, don't, just because like somebody laid out a blueprint on how they did it in the past, you know, that might have worked for that person. I mean, you got to be true to yourself. You know, when I was a younger coach, I remember coach would tell me how to do X, Y, and Z when it came to like building that relationship. Well, that didn't work for me, because that's not me, and the kids could see through that. So if you're having one of these deep conversations with one of your student athletes, pertaining to some stuff outside of football, or it could be about football. They have to feel comfortable, and they have to know that that's you and that's not you putting on the front. Because if they get that sense from you, then you're going to lose all credibility with that student athlete.
Right. I think the line of, well, we're doing it this way because that's how it's always been done is almost the sign of death to whatever it is you're doing. Because I worked for a head coach that, I mean, he coached under some great coaches, coached under Urban Meyer, coached under Jim Tressel, coached under a couple other, really good coaches that obviously had really good success where they were. And then he was a head coach. And every time we did stuff, it was like, well, we did this here. And so that's why we're doing it here. It's like, yeah, but what's the why? And players could see through that. Coaches could see through that. And nothing ever materialized. I mean, he's not in coaching anymore. Nothing ever materialized because there was no conviction behind it. There was no why. And, we were talking football and philosophy, like team, rules or whatever it may be. But I mean, that applies to when you're having these discussions with these kids about X, Y, and Z. Hey, this is how you should handle this situation. You better be able to explain why they need to handle that situation that particular way. Otherwise, otherwise they're just going to look at it as this guy's just trying to control me and tell me how to be. And that's the last thing kids want nowadays. I mean, they do not. It's really such a thin line to walk because as coaches, our job is to instruct these kids and get these kids to perform in certain ways and do certain things that we want them to do. But kids don't want to be told what to do anymore. So you have to find a way, whether it's football related or whether it's racially, mindset related of what they think of what's going on in the world. You have to find a way to help them reach that point, and they have to believe they reached that point on their own. They have to believe that they're doing whatever they're doing because they want to do it. And that's I think the trickiest part of the game now in terms of coaching, whether it's following team rules or whether it's, running a play a certain way or whether it's whatever it may be. I think one of the trickiest things nowadays is finding a way to get these kids to do what you want them to do, but help them understand the why so that they believe they're doing it because they want to do it. That's the toughest part because kids don't want to be told this is what you're going to do and that's it.
Now I know Nubis now, we're at the Division III level. We have a few high school coaches in here. What other levels do we have? Do we have two, or all of us are lower level coaches, or 1AA or FCS, or?
Yeah, we're at Western Oregon. Me and Tim Reed, we could NCAA Division II. So
okay,
we're like from where AJ was from, north in a even smaller town. Our town's about 10,000 people. Our school's 5,500. So similar to probably some of the situations that you've been in with, some of the D3 schools, more affluent areas. I mean, for me, I recruit, the Bay Area, California, and Sacramento. So, majority of the guys that I end up, recruiting, don't look like a lot of the people that live in the community where our school is. So, for me, I feel like I've been in contact with them the longest, so I kind of have a strong relationship with them. So I kind of end up being their advocate naturally. But I wanted to ask you, just from the experience you both have had, at private schools where diversity might not be a huge deal. Like, what are some of the techniques you've had, not for like engaging the players, but for being able to engage your community? Because like our school is awesome. It's not that our community is not by any stretch, but
I'm dealing with some community here in itself. I mean, it doesn't affect me as much because I'm older and the places I live. You could put me on the other side of the rock and I'm gonna be okay. I mean, Nubis could attest to that. But it's more getting out in the community, having your players like. For us, we'll do something with the Aquinas Club in town. We don't have a food kitchen, but there'll be some cleanup avenues. I hate to say the old ladies, but they'll get together and want to do dances and whatnot. So we get our guys involved within the community, and then we kind of coach them up on how to act in the community, be very respectful helpful. Anytime, I know it's kind of a strain now with the COVID and getting in the elementary schools or high schools, getting involved with your local school system right now is kind of a stretch for doing that, but we got our guys involved in that as well. It's just being positive citizens. We tell our guys you can't go to the local bar and try to outdrink the locals. You know that that ain't gonna go too well. You know, but just like I say, get involved. And it's not something that we have to show up to everything that's going on in town. We pick and choose a few things, but we make those things not only meaningful for the people in town, but meaningful for our student athletes as well.
Yeah, I think just having a presence, I think, is the first step. You know, whether, you know, so for example, you know, we're in Kenosha, and this was, you know, we were literally in the middle of when the riots were taking place, and we went downtown about a block over from actually where a couple of those guys ended up getting shot and all that stuff went down. We were literally a block away from that. And it was during the day. We weren't obviously out there when it was all going on, but it was during the day, and we were out there, and we were having our kids. We were working with the Boys and Girls Club. They were helping build, and they were building a new playground for the kids. So our guys were out there, and we were doing stuff, you know, whether it was spreading sod and mulch and stuff like that, and just helping do those types of things. You know, and you know, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, we didn't try to make it a big deal. A local newspaper came out and did you know, just took the typical pictures, did the article, you know, what, all that sort of stuff. But I think that's important because, you know, you look at it and you're in the heat of a really bad situation. I mean, there's literally people that are getting shot on the streets, and it's happening blocks away, like a block away, and we're driving into downtown, and this was literally all, you know, 10, 15 minutes from campus. So it's not like it's not even that far, but you're driving in and you've got boarded up windows and spray paint, you know, BLM, and you got boarded up windows that say, kids live here, please don't harass us, stuff like that. I mean, it's as real as it gets, and to just be out there in the mix and to just show that, hey, in this time here, we're going to try and contribute something good to the society. You know, if a handful of people see that and they go, hey, those kids are doing it the right way. Those kids are out here when all this is going on, and they could be a negative impact, or they could come, but instead they're out here trying to do something small that's at least positive. I think the kids got a lot of joy from that. They were having a good time, and I think that kind of helped take their mind off of what was going on. And I think as a community, then you can start to build some of those relationships. It's obviously a process to do that, and you know, it's not just going to be community service that's going to do it all. You still have to take the time and build it and be out in the community, and the coaches have to be part of it as well. But you know, doing little things like that, I think just showing that example of, hey, listen, with all the bad going on in the world, we're going to find a way to try and add a little bit of positivity to it. And
that comes from the head coach, coaches, administration. It's a tough situation because I always told my guys, you take care of the community, community's going to take care of you.
Right.
Well, they turn on the news now, it ain't happening.
Exactly.
But you have, so it's tough because you're going to have guys try to question, but I don't want to say you're a problem, you're not a solution, but we just got to educate our guys and saying, hey, you know, I know this is a tough situation, but this is the right steps that we need to do to better the situation, because it's like I'm getting like quick story. I went golfing and my golf game's getting better, dudes. You'll be proud of me. Oh yeah, I'm driving the heck out the ball. Sorry, but so we go golfing, and the people in the country club, because there's an article that came out about how the student athletes were upset about the name of the school and all this other stuff, and then the people were like, well, if they don't like it, give them their money back, or they're not paying to go to school here anyway. I'm like, in my mind, because I'm a big guy. I ain't trying to cause a scene or anything. Well, I'm at a D3 school. These kids are paying to go here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like stuff like that. And granted, I'm very fortunate. I'm in Texas. I love to go there. But it's that small town mindset that they're not educated in certain things, and they just pop off at the mouth. And then, some of our players heard it and all this other stuff. But that's why it's hard for me to like say take care of your community doesn't take care of you with everything going on. But that's the right thing to continue saying to our guys, getting them involved in the community, and leading by example. That's all I can do. That's all we can do as coaches, is continue educating the people around us.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like I said, I think I'll say this multiple times for a long time to come. I mean, coaches, we're kind of coming down to being the last line. I mean, there's not a lot of avenues that these kids are going to be able to look at and see some good examples and see it done the right way. And so I think we've got a big responsibility on our shoulders to be the start, to lead the way in that change. And it can't be just to look good for social media so that you can get a recruit or something like that. It's got to be done genuinely. You got to care about the kids, and you got to do your part to make them better human beings, better people. The rest of the stuff starts to take care of itself then. But we're coming down to one of the last lines of defense from that standpoint of still teaching kids proper values and proper ways of doing things.
And it's in my time of doing it, it's not so much some of the kids that we get or the bad seeds or the bad apples. It's just what they've been programmed for their whole life.
Yep.
And then, we're trying to make them, I love coaching at the level that I'm coaching at. Would I love to go coach at a high level? Yeah, but this where I'm at now, and nothing against you, coach at the scholarship level, I feel like I'm setting up a kid for the next 40 years of his life. Just because we're at this level, we're more hands-on with their collegiate experience than you are at the scholarship level. So it's not only getting these guys to buy into what we're trying to sell them or make them do as a football coach, but it's also influencing them on their everyday life decisions and educating them to be respectful to others. You don't have to agree with everybody, but you could be respectful in a way, and just making your surroundings. I always tell my guys, you want to make this place better. You want to leave this place better than what you found it. And a lot of times people get wrapped up in the win-losses, but I'm talking about your overall experience, how you left this campus, how you left this environment in the time that you've been here. And that's what drives me as a coach. I know these difficult discussions are more and more now, but it's something that, you sign up to do. We just don't show up on Saturdays anymore and coach football. We're coaching these kids through their whole, preparing them for their lives and that stuff. So.
Well, awesome. I mean, unless anyone else has anything to add or questions or anything like that, this was great. I mean, I think more discussions like these are needed. The more we can do, more you can reach out to guys, obviously it doesn't have to be on here, but the more we can, if it's you and a couple guys, whatever, a couple coaches you work with, have these discussions, talk with the guys you work with, and then make sure you're talking with your kids too. Have those discussions with these guys and mentor them, teach them, help them, whatever it is that they believe or think, help them understand how to do it, whatever they're doing, the right way, the way that's going to be respectful to others and, allow the biggest chance to impart change. That's what we get to do. We get to impact lots of kids' lives, and so it's a big responsibility. So don't take it lightly, and be willing to have that tough discussion. So, yeah. Coach, anything else? Or
Like I said, when you asked me for the topic, I could go up here and we could X and O's at different times, but I just wanted to have a good, healthy discussion with other coaches and try to make uh, a better situation of what's going on. I appreciate you guys taking your time out and sitting in. And if you need anything, let me know. Nubis has my contact on Twitter. We love to talk X's and O's at a later date, but I just felt like it was a good, healthy topic that needed to be discussed. So I'm very grateful that you guys sat in on this.
no, thanks for it. Is Twitter the best way you want guys to reach out to you then? Anybody that's listening in later or on right now?
Yeah, they could go on my Twitter and they could is that what you kids say, slide in my DMs and and I can link up and get you my contact information and we can talk more ball that way.
Awesome. Sounds good. Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. Really good stuff. We got one more this week, tomorrow evening. That will be at 8 o'clock Eastern. And that's going to be with the offensive coordinator from John Carroll, Drew Nystrom. He's going to be talking. We're going to get back to some X's and O's. He's going to be talking some wide zone stuff, if I'm not mistaken. Going to be going over some of the technique and scheme and some of that stuff in that realm of things. He's good. I worked with Drew at Illinois. He's a really solid coach, really good on the X's and O's. So it'll be great to hear some of the stuff he has. I'm looking forward to it. So again, if you can join us, make sure you hop on. Let anybody else know that would be interested. Should be some really good football talk, X's and O's wise tomorrow. So make sure you join us. That's again at 8 o'clock Eastern. That's with Drew Nystrom, the offensive coordinator at John Carroll University in Ohio. Thanks again, guys. It's always great to have you guys out and to spend some time and network. Again, pass it on to anybody you know. Anybody's welcome. We want as many people here to have that opportunity to come in, learn football, learn life, network, create those connections. Who knows what it leads to? So make sure you get this out to as many people as you can. We'd love to have more people join us. Have a great night, guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow.